It's a pleasure to be here, and we consider it a great honor to actually present to the Sacramento Collaborative, which we've looked at as a great example of the K-16 work that's been going on around the state. Joining me today is Priscilla Fernandez, who serves as one of our data leads. She is part of the Center on Excellence that is connected to Cabrillo College and the Bay Area Community College Consortium. They are the way our collaborative is works is we have a couple of backbone organizations. UC Santa Cruz is our fiscal agent and serves as the administrative backbone. We have a northern region backbone, which is based in the Santa Cruz County Office of Education and works with our three northern counties in Santa Cruz, San Benito, and Monterey. And then UC Santa Barbara is our southern region backbone, which covers San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. And then Cabrillo College acts as our data backbone organization. So that's how we've organized our collaborative. And when it came to data, we wanted to try to be as transparent as possible. And so we created this data dashboard, and I'm going to just share the data dashboard. Um, uh, I think I'm going to be able to get it up here. You can see it now, right?
Yes.
Um, and this is a way in which we post all of the or almost all the data that we get that is not student specific. Um, we have we continue, I think, to try to improve our data collection and the kind of data that we look at. Just yesterday, we had a deep dive with our steering committee about our latest data collection to look at sort of the bright spots in our what we're seeing in our data and what are the things that we need to watch when it comes to our data. One of the things that we feel is that we're still in the infancy of our what the data is telling us because we were a phase two K-16 collaborative, which means that we didn't really get all of our funding done until the end of 24. The contracting and everything took through March 2025. So we're really in the first full school year of offering our career pathways. We have 10 career pathways in our that we have funded in our collaborative. Our two main areas are healthcare and a broad category called engineering and computer science. And we have six counties. We have most of our pathways are within each subregion, with only one that crosses sort of our subregion line, which is we have a healthcare pathway that starts in San Luis Obispo and ends in Monterey. And we've really worked hard to strengthen the intersegmental partnerships and everything else about that. Um, I want to just turn this over to Priscilla to do a walkthrough of the data dashboard so you can see, and then we can talk about the tools we used to collect this data. We can share with you some of the data reports that we've shared with both our collaborative and the state, and then talk about our data sharing and what's happening now and into the future. So, Priscilla, I'll turn it over to you, and you can give an introduction of exactly what your role is, if I didn't capture it correctly.
Yeah, I think you captured it really well. But nice. My name is Priscilla Fernandez. I work with the Center of Excellence, like John mentioned. And yes, I've been supporting the data and research team for our K-16 Collaborative. And I think first I'll just walk you through the overarching process of how we even came to collect this data, just so an overview in case you have any questions of how we did this. But one of the really important pieces of our data collection process was really hosting data training sessions with all of our partners We wanted to ensure that we were defining our metrics as clearly as possible, that we gave them the opportunity to ask any questions. And each individual institution was given an individual template that they all filled out. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well and share those resources with all of you. And we also changed our data collection approach. So the first go around, we did try a survey method. And so I'm happy if anyone is interested in kind of the lessons learned of that approach. I'm happy to share that as well. So our data dashboard here, what you could see is we wanted to first just kind of give a backstory of our regional collaborative. So this is our landing page. And if you go down, it also directs us to our primary website. And then, John, if you want to just go to the first tab there. So this just gives an overview of all of the institutions that are participating in our work. And we wanted to give the user just an opportunity to see the different types of institutions by pathway. And like John mentioned, we had different cycles of funding. So we also separated by institution type and whether people were funded in cycle 1 or cycle 2. And then the bottom table just provides a breakdown of the number of students by pathway, by institution type, and then also by year. So this gives the user a chance to download the data in case that they want to be able to view it that way. And then if you want to go to the next. So this page just gives all of our collaborative partners an opportunity to see kind of the overarching picture across our region of how many students are enrolled in each of our pathways. So they're able to filter by pathway and they're able to filter by institution type. And so we give them an overall picture, but then also break it down by demographics. So they could see whether there were any changes from year to year, but they're also able to see, across institution types, what do those numbers look like? And one of the ways that we really use this information is we, at our convenings, we really have our project leads engage with the data. And really what they're doing is really comparing, okay, when you look at your own institutional data, how do those patterns compare across all of the institutions across the region? How do what different factors are contributing to enrollment patterns at your institutions? Are there bottlenecks or factors that could be restricting enrollment? So all of these types of discussion questions are what we pose to our partners during those sessions. And that's how we really get them to engage with the data. So pass rate. So here, our partners are able to, again, see overall across the pathway, what are pass rates across courses. So these are courses where students pass with a C- or better. So they're able to filter by pathway, look at it by differences in institution type, and also really being able to identify, are there any gaps or differences between, for example, students who identify by different genders, race, ethnicity, and things like that. And really, when we talk to our partners and get them to engage with this data, some of the things that we're asking them to really consider and think about is, are there particular courses where pass rates are lower at your institution? What effective practices across your institutions really help strengthen pass rates? All of these types of questions are the ones that we pose to our partners. And then if you want to go to completion. So this is just giving us a snapshot of the students that complete at each stage. So who graduated, the number of students that graduated from K-12 who were in the pathway, community colleges, and our 4 years. And they're also able to filter by program year. And then our work-based learning tab. So this just looks at overall the number of opportunities that our partners have offered to date. And really here, 2023, 2024 served as the baseline year. So what we're seeing here are kind of capturing those differences between the first year of implementation versus the baseline year, looking at the number of students who have participated in these opportunities, and then also just giving a snapshot of the types of opportunities that our institutions are offering. And yeah, so that is our data dashboard. And John, I think also you were going to share
Yeah,
perhaps our
I wanted to share that we put uh in the chat a link to our data dashboard, which you can also find at our website. I just also put in the chat a copy of the data report. This is the narrative. Has a little bit, it has basically the same information with a little bit more context and a little bit more description about what we see from the data, and where we feel pretty strong about the data, where we want to keep on working about. When we do our surveys with our partners, in addition to the demographic information, which you primarily see on the on that dashboard, we also asked a couple of open-ended questions. And that is to pull some qualitative data that may not be reflected. It gives us an opportunity to find out the programs that people have put into place and other information that might be useful for us in terms of managing the program. I'm going to just put that in the chat as well, if you're interested in taking a look at that. One of the things that has been uh, challenging is building all these pieces together and getting good fidelity from all of our partners. We worked with a number of school districts that are rural, that where the superintendent principal is also, you know, does a little bit of teaching, helps clean up, might serve some lunches, and also is responsible for the data. So we try to make this as straightforward as possible, but it does require work from Priscilla and her partner Lisa Chirac to sometimes get in there and help define the sources that these small rural districts might be able to pull this information to ensure that we're getting the best information possible, and that we're looking at apples to apples rather than apples to oranges, because the first time we went out, we did get a little bit different information based on the schools. And so we've continued to refine this as we've gone on. We think the having the dashboard is really important because it does give a chance for not only our partners but anybody else to sort of see what's going on with our K-16 collaborative and to get a sense of the kind of impact that we might be having. We expect we are now working on our next level. All this data is not uh, student-specific data. It is just the information from the school. So we're now working on a series of data sharing agreements with our partners as pilots to show all of our partners what they could be getting if they could share with us the student-specific data, and that is going to be helpful. And we had a changeover in our data leadership right at the time we were giving out our resources. And so we missed an opportunity to get these data sharing agreements as part of the contracts. And that's why we're doing these data sharing pilots to show the success and the information that we can get. And it's been interesting as we've done that because there's always a question about the usual questions, which is who's going to have this data, who's going to have access, is it how long, is it secure? Um, but it was also interesting as who would be the one to hold this data. I know in Sacramento you've invested a tremendous amount of money in a fairly sophisticated system. We did not commit that same level of resources to it, so we are adding it to someone responsibility. But I'll give you an example. We have this really interesting healthcare pathway between Hollister High, Gavilan Community College, and CSU Monterey Bay. And we have some really committed partners there, and they all were interested in collecting data, but it was a question of who was going to hold that data. It was determined that the CSU had the greatest ability to hold this, and since that was the sort of the point where we were trying to get every student to, we thought that would be useful. So we met with the provost at the university to talk about it, and his response was really interesting. He of course cared, how much staff time it would take, and what would be his responsibilities. But he said, we know so much about the students who come here, but we don't know very much about the students who don't come here. And he saw this as an opportunity to start collecting information that would be useful to his institution to be able to find out why that student from Hollister or Gavilan didn't make the final stop at CSU Monterey Bay, and he thought that would improve the what they offer at their university. So we're trying to find these win-win solutions. As it's we're working another one with UC Santa Cruz and a couple of their partners, and then we'll be working in the South with some of those. I want to take a moment to stop here, see if anybody has any questions. Um, we've just thrown a lot of information out at you, so I'll look to see if there's anything.
A quick question, John, and thank you for the presentation. It was really well done. Um, you had mentioned a kind of a survey capture tool at the beginning. So is your data, is it all aggregate data or is it de-aggregated when it comes to like the student level information?
Currently, we just have aggregate level data.
And then you mentioned that the CSU was in a better position to kind of hold the information. So is that survey data then going to the CSU? And that's kind of where it's all centrally organized and delivered out.
Well, I think the goal is once we complete all the agreements is that CSU will be able to look at the student level data
I see.
and be able to report to us that student from Hollister High, what happened at each stop in the educational continuum,
Okay. So,
and to see if the our support for these pathways is there's also a lot of student supports, work-based learning, family support and engagement. We have a whole community partnership program to work with families, especially for socioeconomically disadvantaged students whose families don't speak English. And so we're trying to see what interventions are making a difference so we can continue to invest in them. So we'll be able to get that with the student level data that we don't get in the aggregate data.
thank
Um,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's really interesting. It's interesting because we did invest a lot in our data sharing agreements for that student level data sharing. But I think we are still missing the piece in where we can aggregate that data into some cool graphs and shareable throughout the collaborative. Because correct me if I'm wrong, like Tina and Manveer, like our data sharing, while student level, it's between the two institutions that are sharing, and we don't necessarily have that one body like you're saying the CSU might be to kind of house it all and analyze it, clean it, distribute it, and so that's an interesting approach in terms of I understand why they seem like that would that's the end case, right, of where these students would land. So it's an
Yeah,
interesting.
and we're gonna we'll as we do this and the data sharing agreements, hopefully all the CSUs and UCs will be willing to do that. We don't know. Cal Poly is sometimes they're a great partner and sometimes difficult to deal with because they don't have to worry about very many things. Their school is always packed. They're a very impacted university, and so CSU Monterey Bay, a newer university, is always working to increase their who's coming there, and so they're a little bit more motivated. Channel Islands, CSU Channel Islands is also a little bit more motivated than Cal Poly. So working out these details will be important over time. The other part of this is trying to figure out to get enough information so some of the hesitation with schools sharing information is they don't want to look bad to their peers. And until we get enough of the student level data from enough institutions, so it's not easy to look at, well, look how bad those Hollister High kids are doing, or Gavilan's doing a terrible job, or something like that. That's going to take a little bit of work. But we've been working with our steering committee and our partners to understand the value of the data and why it's important. And we hopefully that will make a difference as we go through over time, because what we know is that there's a lot of work that's been done between two institutions. The strength to us is about the K-16 is what's happening among the three institutions, the all the levels of the educational continuum. And that's a story that's not well told or documented. And so we're hoping that the strategy that we've chosen will work well and be able to share the information about what the whole K-16 continuum looks like.
Yeah, definitely.
And maybe we just want to say something a little bit about how we collect the data. Priscilla, do you want to talk about the about what we do to collect the data from our partners?
Sure, absolutely. So we, like I mentioned before, we give each partner their own Google Sheet, basically, where they're able to report all their aggregate level data. It is so some of our institutions not it's a very complex sheet because some of our institutions could be funded for one pathway or both. And so you could see this is like a template. Wasn't the final template, but you get the idea, and you could see some of the metrics that our institutions report. And essentially, we have, like I mentioned, training sessions. We host office hours with our partners that are very well attended. We have very engaged partners, which is great. But in order for us to be able to disaggregate the data and put it in a dashboard and have, for example, the pathway be a filter, this is how we need to collect the data. So each of our partners report data on the pathway for which they were funded. And so you could see here that it is quite a lot.
And we originally tried to do this all through a Google form.
So originally our first round, we did a survey that had all of these same metrics. And it was great in the sense that it was very user friendly. However, it was challenging in the sense that if institutions needed to change their data, It ended up being that there was a lot of back and forth. We had to revise things, and so it just didn't work. And so that's why we transferred our approach to using Google Sheets. They can go up in there at any time, update the numbers. After each reporting period, we create copies of their previous submissions, and all they do is just update what they need to submit for this next go around. Yeah, any questions about that process? Yeah, it's pretty evolved.
Yeah, we're kind of curious as what you do in Sacramento.
Yeah, it's interesting because we have like the data that serves the state grant, like showing that we are working towards and reaching our goals. And that's a similar process that you just described in terms of we partner with Third Plateau and they do that on our behalf. And we have a Google sheet that has some of that data. Definitely not as, I would say, interactive as your dashboard that you showed. And yeah, it's basically just she sends email after email asking for the specific like queries to get back. Yeah, and then we have like that data collection process, and then we have the data sharing agreement data that we also want to be able to distill that data. And I think personally, I know I've been a little bit out of the conversation as of recently as we're shifting kind of gears. But I think that's sort of where we have 18, our fiscal partner just shared 18 data sharing agreements signed. And so how do we, yeah, it's great. But like, how do we now, utilize the data that's starting to happen from those and sharing it out in a way that's meaningful and helpful for the whole
Yeah,
collaborative.
just to give you a sense of within our collaborative, what we have our steering committee, and then we have a group that we call our regional leadership. And the regional leadership are actually the people who are running the programs. They meet once a quarter. And at most of those meetings, we talk about data, either preparing them for the next data drop or talking about what we learned from the last data drop. And then we offer trainings before each data drop. And if you go to our website, you can find the videos for K-12 and the post-secondary institutions. And then we try to have a discussion. And so yesterday, we took a look at our last data report, and there were a couple of really good signs that we, the increase in the number of dual enrollment courses that are funded by our collaborative is growing at a nice rate. So we figured that was very successful. The work-based learning opportunities have also greatly expanded during the period of our grant. But there were other signs that we realized that we need to keep an eye on. Our A through G completion is not where we want it to be, and we're looking to do some checking with the UC Compass system to sort of gauge what we're seeing from our partners, as well as one of our metrics is CTE credits, 9+ credits at the community college. And those numbers in our region and in North Bay, I think the Community College Consortium, they have all been registering as relatively flat. Our numbers dipped a little bit. We're not sure if that's a time of year reporting issue or whether we're going to see this long term. So we're looking for our next data collection to give us a better sense about that. But we try to engage all of our partners in what we're seeing, what's working, and what's not, so we can work collaboratively to address these issues with them. So that's how we're trying to use our data on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm not sure there's I mean, we're happy to answer questions, but uh, we're very happy with the work that we've done in collecting this data. There aren't a lot of flashy or bells and whistles. The data dashboard, I just want to give great credit to Priscilla, who had the foresight to really put these elements together in a dashboard that we could share with others. And we do get a lot of requests from collaboratives about this because um, it has been a very effective tool for our partners and for others who want to know about what's going on with our collaborative.
Mhm. Can I ask you, Priscilla? I noticed the platform you're using. Is it a Google related platform?
Yes,
And
it's Looker Studio.
how how easy is that? Or like what's the because I really like visually how it lays everything out. And we already have our data in Google Sheets, so
Oh yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's I would say pretty user friendly. The most challenging part of it is how you set up your data on the back end. Um, Especially for us, we have it filtered by pathways, by institution type. And so each of those require kind of like it to be disaggregated. And so that is kind of where that challenge comes in of like how you set it up is really important.
yeah,
And
definitely gonna
we're proud
play.
to say that Looker was started here in the Central Coast. They're they're this firm. I think they've been bought up by somebody bigger now, but they started in Santa Cruz. So
Nice.
even though
Very cool.
Priscilla's not in Santa Cruz, we're glad she got it in there.
All right, well, I just saw the little note that we have about 5 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, asks about anything data related?
Yeah, I'm curious with the other folks who are on here. Are you the data people at your respective institutions, or are you program leads, or um, it's interesting to know who we're talking to.
I think this is a combination of all of that. So this is the data sharing work group. It's one of the 5 or 6 work groups under the K-16, the Sacramento K-16 Collaborative. And so our focus was on data sharing. Um, so I think of the people, I'm from technology. I think there's a few others from technology. There's other people from research and programs.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I would say it's a mix. We have Roxanne and Tina here, who aren't data people, but they are pivotal to getting the data sharing agreements together. They're the ones brokering the conversations and meeting with the folks to get everything signed and delivered. So yeah, definitely our team invested in data sharing.
Yeah, and I understand that you have that you created that you purchase hardware and there's a server somewhere where this data lives.
Yeah, Manveer, do you want
Not
to talk?
not quite. So the way this is all set up is there's no central data repository or warehouse. Every It's kind of a peer-to-peer, so every entity that shares data with another entity, they would have a separate agreement, and they would just send files back and forth between those entities. So I think Los Rios and Sac State have the highest number of agreements with
Sure.
K-12s and others. So we're just kind of compiling multiple data sets. And so we have our own, right? We have our own data repository that has the data that is being shared with us. But each institution kind of maintains their own.
And actually, I'm really curious, who is responsible for the data matching and all of that?
There's a data security and coordination work group that it was spun off of out of this work group, but they're responsible for ensuring the standards, the secure minimum security requirements, approving like what technology people are using. So And then we also have kind of a data dictionary that is kept up to date across the whole collaborative.
And that group is comprised of like anytime a new institution joins in the data sharing, they get like one representative that has to be a part of that group, right? It's kind of how it works. So it's representative of the people actually engaged in the data sharing.
Uh, Uli, this is Tina. There's a question on the chat that I could probably answer. Is what is the turnaround time to sign an agreement?
Yeah, please, please let us know.
Yeah. I'm curious. It seems to me that it really depends on the partners,
It does.
because you know,
There's a lot of things that factor into how quickly. So when a district is interested in signing an agreement, for example, with Sac State, usually it will be a superintendent, an assistant superintendent, someone that reaches out. We have the conversation, they're all excited, but the problem becomes getting it signed. So there's a lot of back and forth. There's other people that become involved, and the attorney will then send out the agreement to the district. Then they send it out to review. They have certain people that will review the agreement, their IT people, to make sure that they can share the data, because we list all the data elements that will be shared. And so it's a little bit back and forth. I think the fastest ones that I've seen signed are like within like maybe 3 months. And then I still have some that we're going to month 8 and we still haven't signed. And the other big problem is that sometimes the key people that we had the conversations with first are now have left or are in another area. So then no one picks it up. So then I have to go and reach out to them and find out who is now the key person I need to speak to. So.
yeah.
So it takes a lot of back and forth and a lot of reaching out on my part. So my job is to do that. And then once it's signed and we start implementing, then I move it over. It goes over to our IT department and our enrollment services. So it all transitions over there for
Yeah.
implementation.
One of the things that we've had some conversation with our community college consortium is that all the K-12s are now, been giving data to the Cradle to Career initiative, but nobody's really gotten any information out of the Cradle to Career initiative. And so we tried to, we're working on a proposal with the chancellor's office to see if we can actually connect all these pieces together and access some of that data. So if we can crack that one.
We've also tried that, and one of the things that we came up with is that with the SB 640 bill and the CCGI data and all that the K-12 districts are using, is that they're not getting the same data, nor is it a personalized direct admission. And so I created for my districts, for our partners a like chart, a comparison between the CCGI data and our data agreements and what those differences are. So I can
Yeah.
share that with you if you'd like.
Oh my God, I
Yeah,
want to
that would
see
be
that, Tina.
Okay.
that would be great.
All right.
That'd be great.
All
Well,
right.
thank you for having us. I saw we
Of
only have a
course.
few seconds, but I
So
really,
much. This is
really
great.
appreciate it.
Thank you for
Thank you.
joining. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.